This is a really fun episode all about choosing your baby's name. Welcome to the All About Pregnancy and Birth podcast. I'm Dr. Nicole Calloway Rankins, a board-certified OBGYN who's been in practice for nearly 15 years. I've had the privilege of helping over 1,000 babies into this world, and I'm here to help you be calm, confident, and empowered to have a beautiful pregnancy and birth. Quick note, this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice. Check out the full disclaimer at drnicolerankins.com/disclaimer. Now let's get to it. Hey there, before we dive into the episode, the Birth with Power Pathway launches in May. And if you're getting ready for your hospital birth, you don't want to miss it. It's the updated version of my online birth course designed to get you calm, confident, and empowered. Hop on my email list now at drnicolerankins.com/email to be the first to know when it's live. Well, hey, welcome to another episode of the podcast. This is episode number 126. Thank you for being here with me today. On today's episode of the podcast, we have Jennifer Moss. Jennifer is the founder and CEO of babynames.com. She's the author of the Baby Names Workbook and co-host of the Baby Names podcast with her sister Mallory. In the past 25 years since the launch of babynames.com, Jennifer has worked with thousands of parents to find their perfect name. She's been featured on CNN, The Today Show, The List, and in hundreds of top media outlets as a go-to expert on names and naming. Babynames.com is the number one name site with over 2 million visitors a month. We have a fun conversation about current trends in baby names, what influences trends in baby names, tips for choosing your baby's name, what to do when there's a conflict over your baby's name, and I share how we came up with our daughter's names. It's probably not what you would expect. This is a great and fun conversation, and I know you will enjoy it. Now, before we get into the episode, a listener shout out. This is from Ellie P. She left me this review in Apple Podcast, and the title of the review says, "Great podcast for expecting parents." And the review says, "I can't recall how I found this podcast, but I'm so glad I did. I'm a first-time mom, and listening to the topics Dr. Rankins covers in her soothing voice is helping me feel more prepared for so many aspects of pregnancy. Thanks for making this show." Well, you are so welcome, Ellie P, and I hope I'm saying that correctly. I so appreciate you taking the time to leave me that lovely review. Now, she mentioned that she is a first-time mom, and I also have first-time moms in mind when I created the birth preparation course. The birth preparation course is my signature online childbirth class that gets you calm, confident, and empowered to have a beautiful birth, teaches you how to have a calm and peaceful mind, how to understand your body, labor, and birth, as well as the postpartum period. And it also teaches you how to confidently advocate for yourself and things that you want for your birth. That's really important when you're giving birth in a system, in our U.S. healthcare system, that isn't always designed to support you. The value in this course is unmatched. You can check out all the details at drnicolerankins.com/enroll. I've had over 1,000 mamas join the course. I've had the privilege of serving them there, and I would love to serve you too. So check it out again at drnicolerankins.com/enroll. All right, let's get into the episode with Jennifer Moss from babynames.com. All right. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for agreeing to come onto the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. We are talking about baby names. It's something that people always love to talk about. So I'm super excited.
I'm excited too. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So why don't you start off by telling us a bit about yourself and your work and even your family, if you'd like.
Sure. I grew up in the Chicago area, and I actually got my degree in music. But while I was in college, this thing called the personal computer came out onto the market, and I was just so enamored. I glommed onto it and learned how to program. And when I graduated, I just went right into technology. It was like a no-brainer, either that or be a starving musician, right?
Right,
So
right.
I went right into technology and I did a lot of software development. And when the internet came about for public use, I was like, oh, I totally want to learn this platform. And I had this software program I created, which was like a digital baby book, in which I included a database of names and meanings because I've always been fascinated with names and naming my whole life.
Right.
And I had just had a child, so I had just gone through the process. And so I was like, I'm just going to put this database online and just practice. And what I found was tons of people started coming to my website.
Mm-hmm.
And that was before I even registered the domain babynames.com. So when I did that, then the rest is history. And that was back in 1996. So we've been online now for 25 years.
Wow, wow, wow. I just love how you were able to put all of these things together that you enjoy. And also being a woman in the tech space was maybe a little bit new as well. But I think that's just a great story.
Thank you. Yeah, I was one of the first, pretty much first females in the internet industry who was actually on the tech end.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. So you started babynames.com. It's been around for 25 years, you said. So let's talk about so obviously you've learned a lot in that time about baby names. So, so let's get into it.
Yeah. And it grew so much that I needed help with it. So I recruited the smartest people I knew, and that was my mom and my sisters, to help me with the site. And we all became involved and it became a family business.
Love it. Love it. That is love that story.
Yeah,
I always love those things. It's like when things come together, they come together.
Right.
Yeah. So why don't we dive into what are some of the current trends that we see in baby names?
It's so fascinating. Because I'm a data person.
Mm-hmm.
So I just love diving into the data from our website and looking at the trends. This year, we're seeing a trend on the girls' side of nature and flower names. We're seeing like Iris, Daisy, Magnolia, and Dahlia. Those are holding steady. They kind of came onto the charts in the past couple of years. But nature names are really big for girls. On the boys' side, I see this new trend of Brit names like Alistair and Tobias and Simon, and names that had never really been on the US charts. So that interested me. And then there is this, what I call kind of the pandemic names. So I believe that COVID really affected baby names in that people are trying to choose names with power and hope associated with them. Queen, legend, royal, and then god and goddess names like Persephone and Apollo are big. And then names of power like Justice and Gunner and Hunter. So those have just popped onto the charts in the last year or so. And I'm like, I wonder if that's just a reaction to kind of feeling powerless in what was going on in the world.
That is a really interesting observation, and probably so when you think about it, because it's, having a baby is a hopeful thing and you want to infuse some of that into the child's name.
For sure.
So what are some things that you've noticed over time that really influence trends in baby names?
Well, yeah, before the internet, it was mainly family names. That was one of the biggest influencer and what parents really looked towards in naming their children, family names and maybe some pop culture trends. But I've seen that since the mid 90s and through the 2000s, pop culture really has had a huge influence on baby naming. So that would include celebrities, celebrity babies, beloved characters in both literature and television and movies have had a big influence. and, world events, like I said, the pandemic or politics.
Huh. And in a way that kind of makes me sad that that we're so influenced by like celebrity culture and names, but I guess it's just a reflection of our time.
It is. And the name Chloe, for example, was never spelled with a K. It was always spelled with a C, and that's the traditional Greek spelling. But then, the Kardashians came into our zeitgeist, and then suddenly babies were being named Chloe with a K. So you can see direct correlations like that.
Yeah, I'm sure. All right. So what are some suggestions that you have? And we can do at least 3, but maybe more if you have any, for how folks should approach choosing their baby's name.
Well, one is don't make your child's name a joke. We've seen that all before. And, like if your last name is Ball, don't name your daughter Crystal, because you don't understand what they're going to have to go through their entire lives when people laugh at them when they introduce themselves. I mean, imagine that taking a toll. The most important piece of advice I can give is just look at the name from the perspective of the child, because they're going to have to bear it. And is it going to be a blessing, or is it going to be a burden for, are they going to have to spell it for people their entire lives, or are people going to laugh at them, or will people like, oh, that's a cool name, and we have a book called The Baby Names Workbook, and we have a couple little tests to try out names. And one of those tests is the coffee shop test. So go to the coffee shop with a name that you're considering and give the name to the barista and see how they react to that. Can they spell it? Do they laugh? Do they react at all? And see what happens.
Yeah, I think that always when I see names like that, because I've seen lots of names, of course, that are sort of like that jokey sort of, it's like, why would you do that to the child? So I agree that I love the perspective of think about being the person that has to walk around carrying this name and what that means for them.
Yeah.
That's a really, really good piece of advice. So what are some other things that folks should, I love that coffee shop test, by the way, because you can get any type of name you want.
Right. Exactly. Nobody cares.
If you don't feel comfortable doing it, then don't make your child do it. So, So what about some other suggestions for how to approach a name?
Another one is to introduce yourself as if you're your child. And usually when you introduce yourself, you use the first and last name. Like the middle name really doesn't matter as much as you think it does, because rarely are they going to introduce themselves by all 3 names.
Right.
Usually you only put your first and last name on resumes and stuff like that. So how does it sound out loud? And is it rhythmic, and does it sound good and feel good with your last name? Sometimes just saying it is so different than seeing it on paper. So that's another test that, just say, hi, my name is, and see how it sounds.
Love it.
And then another one is, and this is really fun, is to ask the opinion of a 6-year-old.
Oh, we got to hear more about this. Okay.
Because that's how kids are going to react to the name. See how they react. If you have older children, ask them how they feel about the name.
Right.
And if you don't, ask your nieces or nephews or friends' kids and see how they react, because that's how your kid is going to have to deal with their classmates in school.
Nice. Love it. What should parents do when there is a conflict about choosing the baby's name?
Yeah, there can be so many conflicts, and we've dealt with thousands and thousands of parents who come to us with conflicts. But I'll tell you, the most common conflict is what I call the veto dynamic. And that's when one parent is responsible for coming up with names, and they keep throwing them out and throwing them out. And the other parent's like, no. And that rarely works, because you can't read the other parent's mind, right?
Right.
And then it just gets into some vicious circle, and both of them get frustrated. frustrated. So what we recommend is that you both make lists on your own. You can do it on your own and come up with names, but both participate in the process if there are two parents. And then come together and make a specific time to talk about names and then share your ideas with each other. And so it's an equitable type of process. And, you know, your partner might come up with names that you just never thought of ever. But then there's always going to be names where, you know, are automatic no's, like, you know, ex-boyfriends and ex-girlfriends. And there's no way to know that unless you communicate,
That
right?
is very true.
So, yeah, just set aside time to talk about the names. Don't do it while you're working out or while other things are going on. And make sure it's an equitable process where both parents are coming to the table with names.
That makes a lot of sense. And then when should people start working on that whole naming process?
It's funny because I've heard, like me, you know, people creating lists when they were children or teenagers, just collecting favorite names. And it's usually more women than men who do that.
Right.
They're forward thinking. And plus, we're the child bearers. But yeah, and I don't think it's ever too early to start collecting names. You know, I have a notes on my phone where I collect names, and I'm not even of baby making age anymore. Right. But that's my business.
Right.
But I just love collecting names. You might see a street name that you love, or you might think of, again, a beloved character that you think, oh, that would make a cool baby name. And it can even be before you're even expecting. I know with my daughter's name, she's Miranda. And that was my husband's mother's maiden name, you know, like Lin-Manuel, it was Miranda. And as soon as I said, what was your mother's maiden name? And he told me Miranda, I wasn't even pregnant yet. We weren't even married yet. And I was like, okay, that's going to be our daughter's name.
Oh, wow.
And he looked at me and he's like, yeah, okay, hon, you know. Gee, this is jumping the gun. But it turned out that was our daughter's name.
I love it, love it, love it. So I do think people probably shouldn't wait until the last minute, though.
No, because that can create a lot of stress.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. You've got enough to worry about, you know, in the last month or so. So don't wait till the last minute for sure.
Yeah, or at least have some options. I definitely see people come and they have like maybe 2 or 3 options, and then they want to see the child first before they pick the name, which I can kind of see. But like, don't have like 12 options. Just narrow it down to like 2 or 3, and then you can decide.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on when to reveal baby's name to like family and friends, either like during pregnancy versus waiting until the baby's here?
You know, I don't think there's a right answer to that. I think it all depends on, you know, your preferences, the parents' preferences. Some people want to get input as much as they can. Some people just don't want to reveal it because, you know, it's a lot easier to reveal a baby's name after the baby's born because less people are going to criticize it. Like, obviously, once the baby's here, right?
Exactly.
All the focus is going to be on the baby itself. And they're not going to say, well, that name sucks. They're more likely to say that before the baby's born. So some parents choose to wait, but some parents do want input. So it's a personal preference.
Yeah. For both of our girls, we didn't tell anybody the names until after they were born. And that's primarily because we fell into the camp of we don't want anybody else's opinion. Like, so we can just like, wait, baby's here. Like, this is the name and you just have to accept it.
What are their names?
My older is Sienna.
Oh, I like that.
And my younger one is Elena.
I love that.
Yeah, thank you. And interestingly, they came from, this is crazy story, but my husband, Falcon, his name is Falcon. So we have
that's wonderful.
Like, I have the most boring name in the family. He is a massive like Formula One race car driver. And his favorite driver was someone named Ayrton Senna, who was from Brazil. So he's like, I really want a daughter named Sienna. And I was like, okay, fine, whatever. So her first name is Sienna and her middle name is a family name.
Oh, cool. Oh.
And then the younger one is another driver. They were like his biggest rival, but also like they were friends, was Alain Prost. He's French, and the French version of Alain is Elena. So that's how we came up with our names. Weird story. Like, yes, our
I
children
love that
are named
story.
related to Formula One race car drivers. So anyway.
Yeah, it's very unique. Never heard that
Yeah,
before.
and then her middle name is also a family name.
Yeah.
Okay, so what happens if you want to change your baby's name?
That's a great question. People have written to us saying, I just don't feel right about it. He doesn't seem like a Simon or something like that.
Right.
And I'd say, if it's before a year, it's okay. Go ahead and change it. I mean, there are reasons to change a child's name. Like, what if you had, 10 years ago chosen Jeffrey Epstein, for example? Like if somebody comes out and there's a really negative connotation to the name, you might want to think about changing it or having them go by their middle name. But then after a year, I would say consult a child psychologist because, the message you're sending is that the name is so tied to identity that you're rejecting them in some way. So, I'm not a psychologist, but I'd say be careful with older children if you want to change their names and consult somebody before you do so you can investigate why you feel the need to change it.
That's a really, really, really good advice. And then I guess legally, is it complex? Does it depend on where you are? Like how legally complex is it to change your baby's name?
It depends on the state. We have a section on our website about changing your name, no matter how old you are. And it depends on the state. And they just pretty much want to make sure that you're not doing it for nefarious reasons, that you're not trying to evade the law or a warrant or something to that effect.
Right.
But, it costs a little money, but it all has to do with, I think, the Secretary of State where you live here in the States.
Okay. So let's talk about some baby names that you've come across. I don't know if I sent this to you in the questions, but let's start with, what are your 3 favorite baby names? Do you have 3 favorites or some favorites that you like?
I don't know, because I don't really collect them for myself anymore. Of course, I love my daughter's name, Miranda.
Of course.
And I also like a very similar name that's a French kind of version of it, Mireille, Mireille. And for boys, I tend to like longer traditional names for boys, like Jonathan or Alexander.
Christopher, maybe.
Yeah.
No, not so much.
I'm not Christian. Okay. She doesn't really want to do that. But I would say, like kind of classic names like Errol, Errol.
Okay.
Things like that. So that's my naming style, but I wouldn't put that on anyone who asks us to come up with names for that.
Sure.
That's really hard anyway.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do people ask you to come up with names?
Oh, yeah. And that's really hard because it's so personal.
Right.
It's like asking some stranger to pick out an outfit for you, but that outfit you're going to have to wear the rest of your life.
Right.
So, it's really hard to come up with names for other people.
Yeah, I'm sure. So what are then some of the most unusual baby names that you've come across?
Well, of course, unusual is
relative,
subjective, right? What might seem unusual to us might be a common name in another country or culture. But there's one that just really kind of stays in my memory. And there's a child in New Zealand who was actually taken custody by a judge because the parents named her Tallulah Does the Hula from Hawaii. Like that was her name, her first name.
Oh.
And a judge deemed that to be abuse or, not acceptable.
Yeah.
So he took custody of the child. Well, within a couple hours, obviously, until the parents came up with a new name for this girl.
Oh,
but
wow.
Things like that sounds like a joke to me. So anything like that is just bizarre. I also think it's kind of silly to name a child after a well-known brand, like Facebook was a name of a child. But even something like Bentley or Ruger, like why attach that particular brand to your child
Right.
and not let them choose whether they like it or not?
Right.
I mean, I'm sure there were beer lovers that named their children Corona and, well, good luck with that. Talking about name changes.
Right. So, yeah, why would you name your child Facebook? Like, it's always perplexing.
Yeah. So to me, that's unusual and ridiculous.
Yeah. Okay. So as we wrap up, then what would you say is one of the most frustrating parts of what you do in your work?
Well, I think we touched on it, and that's when parents think that I can come up with the perfect name for their baby.
Mm-hmm.
And I think only the parents can do that because it's all about you. It's about your experiences. It should be about the people you admire and who have influenced your life or the literature. I mean, it's just so personal. And I also teach a writing class. And one thing I say about naming a character is you have to consider the character's parents. Where did they grow up? What kind of personality do they have? Are they conservative? Are they wild? Are they hippies? Because all that goes into naming a baby. What's the culture? So there's so much that goes into it, even just like minutia, that I don't think another person, especially a stranger, can do that for you.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And then on the flip side, what's the most rewarding part? I can guess, but what's the most rewarding part?
Well, because our site's been around for 25 years, sometimes I forget that it's a household name. So when I meet someone and they've heard of our site or used it, and that is just so fun for me. They're like, oh yeah, I know that. I've been to that. That helped me name my baby. And that is extremely rewarding. And because it's been around for 25 years, the babies who were born then are now having babies. So
wow.
We're now into our second generation. And to me, that's just so cool.
That is so cool. Yeah, I was going to say, I guess that it was rewarding when people are like, I used your site and I found my baby's name and things like that. So yeah, love it. So what is your favorite piece of advice that you would give to expectant families?
I'd say start early so you don't have to stress about it. But the name is one of the most important things that you're going to be bestowing upon your child. More important than the crib or the layette or how you decorate the nursery. And remember, you're not just naming a baby, you're also naming an adult.
That is true. That is very, very, very true. All right. So where can people find you?
Well, you can always come to our website, babynames.com. And my sister and I have a podcast. We're currently in our 4th season, and it's called the Baby Names Podcast. And you don't have to be expecting to enjoy it. It's all about names. And we go into one name subject every episode, and we report on celebrity baby name news and then take questions from our listeners.
Oh, so cool. All right. And you said the website is babynames.com, of course.
Right.
Okay. And I'm sure that the podcasts and all the other links and things are there as well.
Right. On all the major players.
All right. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This was a fun episode. I know folks are going to find it very useful.
Well, thanks, Nicole. Thanks for having me. This has been fun.
All right. Wasn't that a fun conversation? I really enjoyed talking about choosing your baby's name. Now, after every episode, when I have a guest on, I do something called Nicole's Notes, where I talk about my top 3 or 4 takeaways from the conversation. And here are my Nicole's Notes with Jennifer. Number 1, I want to say a quick note about cultural names. So there is a difference between names that are jokey and names that are culturally different than what may, quote unquote, be typically seen in the US. Don't be afraid to name your child something that's culturally meaningful to you. Okay. People can and should learn how to pronounce it. So don't shy away from names that are meaningful to you just because they may be different than like Smith or Williams or, more common, quote unquote, American names. Number 2, if you encounter someone and their name or their first or last name is quote unquote difficult or challenging to pronounce because it's something you're not familiar with, and you say something like, you know what, do you have a nickname or something that I can use? Or I can just never pronounce that. Those types of things are rude and disrespectful. You can ask how to pronounce someone's name. You can make an effort to pronounce it. It's not that hard. And if you butcher it, then you can just apologize, try again, and ask again how to make it work. Don't be dismissive of other people's names just because it's something that is challenging for you to pronounce. And then the final thing I want to say about names is when you're choosing your baby's name, have fun. This isn't something that should be stressful. This is one of the most enjoyable parts of your pregnancy and welcoming a new baby. So have fun with the process. It definitely should not be stressful. All right. So there you have it. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast in Apple Podcast, wherever you're listening to me right now, Spotify, Google Play, or whatever myriad of podcast players there are out there right now. And I always love it when you leave a review in Apple Podcast in particular. It helps other women to find the show, helps the show to grow. And I do shout outs from those reviews from time to time. Also, don't forget to check out all the details of the birth preparation course at drnicolerankins.com/enroll. Childbirth education is so important. I highly encourage, even if for some reason you don't choose the birth preparation course, but I don't know why you wouldn't choose the birth preparation course, but if for some reason you don't, then choose something for childbirth education because it is so important and it's not something that you can skip. So that's it for this episode. Do come on back next week. And until then, I wish you a beautiful pregnancy and birth. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the All About Pregnancy and Birth podcast. Head to my website, drnicolerankins.com, to get even more great information, including free downloadable resources on how to manage pain and labor and warning signs to look out for after birth. You'll also find information on my free online class on how to make a birth plan that works, as well as everything you need to know about my signature online childbirth education class, the Birth Preparation Course. Again, that's drnicolerankins.com, and I will see you next week.